Buddhism emerged in India sometime around the 5th century BCE. At the time, the main religious tradition of India was the Vedic system, based on the writings known as the Vedas and the performance of rituals by Vedic priests known as Brahmins. It was a very socially stratified society with a series of castes, with the Brahmins at the top of society, followed by the Kshatriya, the caste of warriors, and the Vaishya, the caste of merchants, followed by the Shudra, the caste of workers. There was also another group, the untouchables, who were at the very lowest levels of society. However, during the 5th and 6th century BCE, India began to experience a religious and cultural transformation. People began rejecting the teachings of the Vedas and instead began to go to the forest to listen to the religious and philosophical ideas of various gurus, which is a spiritual teacher. Many of these new ideas are found in a group of writings known as the Upanishads, which literally means to sit at the foot of. Some of the new ideas that emerged were the concepts of karma, reincarnation, samsara, and moksha. Karma literally means action, and it is a law of moral cause and effect. What goes around comes around. However, karma is not always instant, and sometimes people act in ways that they need additional lifetimes to account for all of their actions. So the idea of reincarnation was born. Your karma dictates your rebirth. If you've got good karma, you should be reborn into a happy, flourishing family. If your karma is bad, you will find yourself struggling throughout your life, usually to learn lessons that you did not learn in the previous lives. The Indian idea of reincarnation is quite a bit different than how most people in the West think of it. Usually when we hear of someone who claims to have been reincarnated, they say they were a famous person in their previous lives. You rarely, if ever, hear someone saying that they were cleaning toilets or breaking their backs in the fields. In the Indian philosophical and religious imagination, no matter whether you were born into a wealthy, privileged family, a family that struggles, a happy family, you're still born into a world where every life is touched by suffering. Everyone suffers one way or the other. No one can escape suffering in their lives. And we usually act on that suffering, which creates more karma, which can lead to even more suffering. So the Indian worldview is that you are born into a world of suffering, your actions create more karma, you die, and then you're reborn into a world of suffering, where your actions create more karma, and then you die. And then you're reborn into a world of suffering, where your actions create more karma and you die. And then you're reborn into a world of suffering, where your actions create more karma and you die. And then you're reborn into a world of suffering, where your actions create more karma and then you die. And I could keep going on and on and on, but I think you get the idea. This goes on for endless cycles of time, and that is what is known as samsara. Samsara is the endless cycle of rebirth. So in the Indian religious tradition, the focus is not on salvation like it is in the Western religious traditions, but rather on liberation, finding release from the endless cycle of samsara. This is known as moksha, and the Upanishads tell us it can be found through knowledge. And it is within this context of ideas that Buddhism is born. To understand Buddhism, it helps to look at the life of the Buddha. One thing I have to make very clear, though, is that the Buddha is not a god. The Buddha was a regular person, just like you and I, but someone, Buddhists believe, who achieved something extraordinary. Buddha is actually a title that means awakened one. The person known as the historical Buddha was born as Siddhartha Gautama Shakyamuni. Scholars aren't entirely sure of the year of his birth, and there is no single version of the Buddha's biography. But what follows is the most common story of his life. Siddhartha was born in the village of Lumbini in southern Nepal, although he was raised in the village of Kapilavastu in northern India. You often hear Siddhartha referred to as a prince, as if his father, Suddhodana, was a king. We don't think that's really true. It would be more accurate to think of his father as something like the chief aristocrat of the village. His mother was Mahamaya. And according to the legends, one night early in her pregnancy, she had a dream where a six-tusked white elephant appeared to her and entered her side. This was a very auspicious sign for her unborn child. The custom of the time was that when a woman was near her due date, she would leave the home of her husband and travel to the home of her family. This is what Mahamaya did, although on her journey to her family home, she began to feel ill. So she stopped at the village of Lumbini, which was known for its healing pools. However, the bath and the pools did not help her. She soon realized that she wasn't sick, but that she was going into labor. So she exited the bath and grabbed the lowest branch of a nearby tree and standing gave birth to Siddhartha, with the child exiting her side. This is the traditional way that the mothers of all Buddhas are said to give birth. It is also said that at the time of his birth, little baby Siddhartha took several steps, and every place his foot touched the earth, a lotus blossom bloomed. He raised his hand to the sun and announced, "I am the Savior of the world." Of course, most scholars think this is mythic embellishment and did not really happen. Mahamaya took her newborn baby home to Kapilavastu, and 7 days later she passed away, leaving Siddhartha to be raised by his father and his aunt. His father had some Brahmin priest examine his new son and look at his astrological chart. The priest determined that Siddhartha would either be a great king and military ruler, or he would be a Buddha. Now remember, this was a time when many people were giving up on the old traditions, abandoning their villages to learn from gurus in the forests. Suddhodana knew what path he wanted for his son, and it was not the path of spiritual awakening. Some versions of the life of the Buddha say that Suddhodana kept Siddhartha isolated from the village and did not allow him to ever leave the family home. When it came time for Siddhartha to marry, his father had the most beautiful young women brought to their home so that Siddhartha could choose a wife, which he did. However, we are also told that the young woman he chose, Yasodhara, fell instantly in love with Siddhartha upon first sight, and he fell in love just the same. Together, they had a son named Rahula. When Siddhartha was about 28 years old, he experienced what are called the 4 passing sights. His father was away, so Siddhartha had his father's chariot driver take him into the village. This was Siddhartha's first time to ever leave the seclusion of the family estate. The first of the 4 great passing sights was an old man. Siddhartha asked the chariot driver what was wrong with the man, and he explained that what he was saying was simply an old man. "Surely you understand that everyone gets old," he said to Siddhartha. "You're not the young child you once were. You've watched your own son grow older. We all age." "I guess so," said Siddhartha, telling the driver to continue forward. The second of the 4 great passing sights was a sick man. Siddhartha asked the driver what was wrong with him, and the driver explained that he was sick. "Surely you know that we all get sick from time to time," the driver said. Siddhartha acknowledged this and told the driver to proceed in their journey. The third of the 4 great passing sights was a funeral procession. Siddhartha saw a dead man being carried to a funeral pyre where he would be cremated. The corpse was surrounded by grieving loved ones. Siddhartha had never seen anything like this, so he asked the chariot driver what he was witnessing. "Someone has died," the driver explained. "What do you mean, died?" asked Siddhartha. "Well, he stopped living. We all die. I'm sure you don't remember her, but your very own mother died. Your father will die. Everyone you love will die. You will die too." Siddhartha thought this over for a moment and said, "So let me get this straight. We all get old, we all get sick, and we all die." "That's right," said the chariot driver. And then Siddhartha said, "Take me home." On the journey home, Siddhartha saw the 4th of the great passing sights. This was a sannyasin, a wandering holy man. Having never seen a sannyasin before, Siddhartha asked the chariot driver who the man was. "That is a sannyasin," he explained. "Someone who has renounced the world and all of their possessions in an attempt to overcome the suffering of the world." It is said that in that moment, Siddhartha knew exactly what he had to do. There are different versions of what comes next. Some stories say that when Siddhartha confronted his father with his plans, he stood in place for 30 days to show his resolve. What we know is that shortly after witnessing the 4 passing sights, Siddhartha left home. He kissed his sleeping wife and son goodbye and left in the dark of night. When he got to the edge of the estate, he removed his clothes and put on the robes of a monk. He cut off all of his hair, a sign of his renunciation. He also removed all of his jewelry. The Buddha is usually depicted with long, drooping earlobes. That is because his ears had been pulled down by the weight of all the earrings that he had worn. It demonstrates that he had abandoned great wealth in search of a way to end human suffering.